Plenty of potatoes, Mrs. W.
Yeah, they're looking lovely, aren't they? We've only got one tub left now, though, haven't we?
We have. The good news is, June means potatoes in the garden.
Yeah.
Not far away from that harvest. In today's video, we shall be giving you our top tips for the month of June. Hello and welcome back to the No Dig Norfolk Gardener channel. We've made it to June. Here in the UK we call it Flaming June. And it is flaming today. But it's not always flaming. But the most important thing about June is that we reach the summer solstice. It's a time when we get the maximum amount of daylight available to us to grow all these lovely vegetables that we have in the ground, and also what's to go in the ground. You saw me harvesting our potatoes from the tubs, but actually for our first tip we need to go and look at the potatoes that are in the ground. They're growing really well. We have two varieties in here, Casablanca and our Charlotte. You can see that these Charlotte are already flowering.
Well, they are, aren't they?
Now, what do flowers mean? Flowers mean that there's some tubers under there. They won't be at their maximum harvest yet, but it means there are tubers that are forming under there. All potatoes actually flower. Some don't. That doesn't mean to say that there aren't any tubers there, but the ones that do flower, it is an indication that they are forming their tubers. What we want is to be able to get the biggest and largest tubers that we can. What we don't want is for this to be putting all its energy into making a flower and making a seed head. So, take it off.
Oh, poor little flower. It's really pretty.
Sure you can find a small little vase for that, Mrs.
Thank
W.
you. It's really lovely.
And I know it does sound brutal, but I can assure you, you will get larger tubers because of that. We do this every year. I think we mentioned it for the first time last year, didn't we?
Yeah.
But we've been doing this every year and it really does work. The potatoes won't worry about these flowers or making seed heads because they do. Although we grow potatoes from what we call seed potato, they will make a seed head. The other thing is that if you can get the flowers off so that they don't make a seed head, if you're like us, we have some very young grandchildren. Well, actually, Charlie's getting on a bit now. He'll be 9 this year, won't he? And young Maggie, she's going to be
7.
7. It's a 7 from Len. But we do have young Rosie, who is actually not even 2 yet.
No.
And she does like to waddle about here with us. The last thing you want them to be doing is to be picking those seed heads off because they look like gobstoppers when they're on there.
They look a bit like a tomato, don't they?
Yeah.
Green tomato.
And you don't want them getting confused and eating those because it won't do them a lot of good. So, take them off. Before my next tip, I just thought I'd show you how the Calibris are getting along. I know there's 1 or 2 of you that are growing along with us. You can see it's starting to fold itself in the middle. That means that it's starting to produce its flower, which will be the Calibris.
They're really lovely looking, aren't they?
They are.
Super strong and healthy.
Really good. So now we've got them to this stage, we keep ours covered all of the time because we have pigeons that are flying about and they do love a brassica leaf. But if you haven't covered yours yet, do make sure you do cover them, because we have seen here the arrival of the cabbage white butterfly. So keep them netted. And I've left a link in the description of what we use, and make sure it's tight. They can get under there. We've known that before, haven't we, Mrs. W?
Oh yes, they're crafty.
So do keep it nice and tight so that they can't get there. I think it was Claire that asked me about our asparagus. Yes, it is actually doing really well. It's in its second year now, so we still haven't had any asparagus harvest, because you have to let them build up their strength before you start to do that. Hopefully, as we go into year 3, we'll be able to take a very light harvest, and then the year after that we should be in full production.
Can't wait.
But if you already have asparagus, enjoy the last of your harvests. If you've only just started growing it, this is the last time that you'll be able to pick it, and then you need to let the rest of the spears grow up with their fronds so that it can put all of the goodness back down into the roots to give you great harvests for next year. Ours are already up here with fronds, aren't they?
Yeah, they are.
Very lovely they look too.
Yeah.
About 2 weeks ago we planted up some more Charlotte potatoes that we had left over. But this next tip is not only about the potatoes. Anything you're growing in containers, it can get very dry very quickly. So do ensure that you keep your containers watered really, really well. Keep on top of your watering, otherwise you'll struggle to get a harvest. While we're on the subject of watering, my next top tip is ensure that anything you're growing undercover is watered regularly. It's common sense that you know they're going to need watering, but the key word is regularly. The more regular water these get, whether you want to have your regime every 2 days, every 3 days, myself and Mrs. W, we like to come in here and give them a drop of water every day from the watering can. That will help your yields, the harvest that you're going to get. It also helps with not having the tomatoes splitting, because if you go away for a week or don't water for a week, and yeah, we've all been there, it's boiling hot today. The last thing I want to be doing is standing in this greenhouse talking to you guys. I want to be outside talking to you guys.
Yes, exactly. I'm standing just outside.
But these poor plants do need watering, and watering regularly. Also with the tomatoes, if you make sure your water regime is regular, it does help with the blossom end rot. It can be caused by a lack of water, but that lack of water means that they're not getting enough iron. Water contains iron, and that will help with any problems that you may have had or you may get with blossom end rot. And while we're in here, my next tip is to actually just make sure that you do keep on top of the side shoots. Don't let them get really big. As we've said many times before, between the stalk and the leaf, here's one here Mrs. W's forgotten. Look, it's a good job I'm here.
That is a good job.
And just keep taking those out. We want to get the maximum production from these plants. The broads, they're coming ready for their harvest, Mrs. W.
Yes, I know.
If you start at the bottom, they'll be the most furthest forward. You can feel the beans in there. Of course, if you want larger beans, let them grow that little bit longer. But that's the beauty of June. Our harvests start to become ready. There will become so much more that's ready to be able to harvest. And I know that myself and Mrs. W, we are looking forward very much tonight for some lovely broad beans with those new potatoes that I harvested earlier.
Definitely.
Now, as we said, I think it might have been back in April now, but you can see these are really starting to get the rust. And actually one of the best meals that I like, a lovely lunchtime meal, is some lovely new potatoes with a few broad beans. The broad beans cooked in some lovely spring onions and a bit of garlic. This is never going to make a huge bulb, the leaves are going to struggle to photosynthesize as we go along. So I'm going to have this up now, and we're going to use this as wet, or which is sometimes commonly known as green garlic. And you can harvest them at this stage. You don't have to let them have a bulb, but obviously if you want to store garlic, you do need to let it make its bulb. This just simply isn't going to get here. Look at all this, look.
Such a shame, isn't it?
Yeah.
Thankfully, we haven't got that in the polytunnel or the greenhouse. So
No, we
that's
haven't.
good.
And we must have 50 odd bulbs in there,
Yes,
mustn't
we're
we?
not
So
going to be short of garlic.
should be all right. So we can enjoy this now, and oh,
I can smell,
Smell
it
of that.
standing here.
it's just amazing. If we just take the tips off, and you can use that, and actually, Mrs. W, you'd use that right up to there, wouldn't you?
I'd take the rust bits off, but yeah, I'd
Yeah.
probably use all of it, apart from the rust bits.
And
Lovely.
all of that has a lovely flavour and taste of garlic. Peas are starting to form their peas. In fact, several of them are now, aren't they? So now is a very good time to ensure that these do get water. If they go 2 or 3 days without water, make sure you water them. When they're in flower and trying to make their pea pods, that's the most beneficial time to water them. You're not wasting it then. If you were watering these peas back in March and April, well, you didn't really need to. The rain fell out of the sky. But now that we're at this point, and we do have 4 or 5 days without any water going in, this is when it's most beneficial. In fact, that goes for all watering. When your plants get near the harvest, that is the most beneficial time that you can water them. That, and when they first go in and they're very, very tiny. We always follow our first and second early potatoes with leeks. So for us, it will be July before we can plant the leeks in here. We need these to harvest and for us to be able to have harvested them. But if you have spare ground, leeks can go into the soil now. They can go into their final planting positions. Raspberries can get really unruly and out of control. They'll send up suckers all over the place. You can see this one has actually come out outside the bed. This is where it should be. So, I'm going to have him out. He'll probably try and come back again. There's another little one here, look. But just keep chopping it back, and eventually it will give up the ghost. While we're here, our next tip is for the blackberry. You can see the canes that we tied in. They're there. Won't be long before that's in flower, actually. It's not. I can see the buds starting to appear. Here, look. Here they are.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So it looks like we're on for another bumper harvest of blackberries, Mrs. W.
Brilliant.
But now is the time to start sorting out, this month, the new shoots that have come up. You can see there are many here. We only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 that we tie in. There must be 20 shoots from this side and on that side. And eventually what I will do is, once they get so tall, I'll select the ones that I want to keep, cut the rest back, and the ones I keep, we shall tie 3 to that side and 3 to that side. Now, we have made a video about that before that you can go back and watch, but a bit later on this month, that's a job that we will be doing, so you'll be able to see exactly how we go about doing that. You'll have seen, that was a video ago or 2 videos ago, I forget where we are now, Mrs. W, but you're sort of planting out our sweet corn and also the squash. In most areas now, June is a good time when you can plant out all of your tender veg, whether that be sweet corn, tomatoes, courgettes, squashes. They can all go out during the month of June, when all danger of frost has passed and the temperatures are climbing. Every month, of course, we always give you our top tips, but we do like to encourage you that if we haven't mentioned something and you do something different, then do leave your comments down in the comments section so that other people can see what else you could possibly be doing. We have a limited amount of time. I try to make sure that the videos don't go over 20 minutes so that you're not sitting there forever and a day watching us. So we try to get the most important jobs into any of these top tip videos that we do. And while we're on the subject of comments, thank you all very much for all the likes you keep giving us. We really do appreciate it. But for my next tip, we were inside the greenhouse a little while ago. There are times in the UK when it gets really, really hot. I can remember back in 2020, it was the first time we ever put any shading over here, wasn't it? We've never had to do that before, but it just got so very hot that we needed to do something to cool the greenhouse down. Of course, if you live in very hot countries, you probably already do this, but it is something to bear in mind even here in the UK. It could be a really hot summer this summer. We could go days with the temperatures sort of 25 to 30 degrees C. That's the time when you need to be getting some shade over. And not just the greenhouse, but also polytunnels too. They get really very, very hot. Soft fruit is starting to become ready. We have lots of gooseberries on the bushes. The raspberries are starting to form on the summer raspberry plants. The red currants, they're there. They're not red yet, but they're there. So are the black currants. We talk about covering things like the brassicas to stop the white cabbage butterfly laying their eggs and destroying all the leaves so that they can't grow. Right in front of Mrs. W here, we covered our strawberries, our outdoor strawberries, with the bird netting. Now in June, it's the time when we want to be thinking about netting the others, especially if you garden on an allotment or in a garden where you know the birds will attack. Anything that turns bright red, bright green, that sort of excludes the blackberries, but they like those too, don't they?
They do.
So it's worth just draping a bit of netting over so that they can't get to those fruit. Otherwise you're not going to have them. And if you are going to put a bit of netting over something like a bush, make sure you peg it down and keep it tight. The last thing we want is for the birds to get caught within that netting. It's been a gorgeous day in the garden. And I guess my last tip for you is for men like myself, follically challenged. Do make sure you keep your head covered. A couple of weeks ago when we were filming, we'd been out here all day gardening, hadn't we? And the sun caught the top of my head and it all blistered, didn't it?
It did, yeah.
You tend to forget about it because you get on with doing the jobs that you're doing.
We'd come out early in the morning and it was misty, wasn't it?
Yeah.
We both got engrossed in what we were doing and neither of us thought about it.
Yeah. And of course, the UV levels are rising. So do make sure you get on plenty of protection so that you don't burn and cause yourselves problems later on in life. Because it's always lovely being out in the garden. We do just need to look after ourselves a bit. Now myself and Mrs. W, we are going to be having a barbecue this afternoon, which I'm very much looking forward to. We've got a lovely spatchcock chicken. We're going to pick some lovely herbidaceous from our herb bed.
Yeah.
We've got broad beans, new potatoes, and some lovely green garlic.
Garlic, nice.
Do have an absolutely fantastic gardening week. And we shall see you back here in our No Dig Norfolk garden on Thursday.